Hey Popcorn Junkies. If you're followers of the channel, you'll have watched the rather insane Vlogmas earlier tonight in the strangest hotel in London. Anyway, for movie fans, movie lovers, obviously, the Popcorn Junkies carries on responding to trailers and reviewing films that are released during the festive season. And this trailer that has landed in the last couple of days is for a film that I think is going to be a very important film. And this is a film by Jonathan Glazer. It's called The Zone of Interest. Jonathan Glazer is a director who made Under the Skin, which was a fabulously odd, creepy, unsettling sci-fi psychological horror film set in Glasgow starring Scarlett Johansson driving around in a white van killing people. He also made Sexy Beast, which was that fabulous sort of criminal gangster, sociopathic gangster movie starring Ray Winstone, Ben Kingsley and Ian McShane. Brilliantly odd, brilliant exploration of extraordinarily toxic masculinity. So this film is loosely based on a book by Martin Amis, and it is apparently very loosely based. I haven't read the book, but it's effectively about the commandant of the Auschwitz concentration camp, a character or a person called Rudolf Höss, and it's a portrait, as I understand it, of him, his family, and them living, if you like, as a dream life, or the life that they dreamt of, or the so-called perfect life, or ordinary life, or, you know, realizing that sort of 2.4 children perfection, the nuclear family, the sort of, you know, the ordinary, normal, to be aspired for Germanic family life. And it's about them leading that life quite normally, quite ordinarily, quite unsensationally. But what makes the whole thing become, if you like, shot through or punctured with some deeply disturbing darkness and sort of threat and unease and dis-ease and horror is the fact that where they live, Rudolf Höss, as the commandant of the Auschwitz concentration camp, they live in a sort of almost picket-fenced idyll of a perfect house with a perfect garden, with their perfect lives. And they are in the shadows of the industry, quite literally, the industry, the smoke belching from chimneys, the sounds, the creaking, groaning, creaking sort of chains, if you like, of the horrendous, grisly industry of the Holocaust and the punishment and genocide of millions of Jewish people. And it's a film that seeks to throw focus on how can someone or how can people sit with any ease alongside such horror. How do you go about normal living without this in some way impacting on you or infecting you or distressing you? And if you can, what does that say about you? Now, the way I want to relate this to the Gaza-Israel crisis is going to be intriguing because I want to watch the trailer. This is the first full trailer. We've just seen a teaser, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. But let's check this out. It's you know, again, the soundtrack on Under the Skin was sensational, and the composer on this is Mika Levy yet again. Often a very discordant, scratchy, earthy kind of. She sort of creates noise and sounds that she kind of somehow pulls together, and they create a tapestry of mood, emotion. Mika Levy's music somehow gives you a psychological insight into the characters in the films that they create the music for.
Dieses Blumen, das ist ja wunderschön. Ja, die Azaleen da. Hier gibt es auch Gemüse. Bisschen Kräuter, auch Rosmarin. Hier ist rote Beete. Das ist Fenchel. Die Sonnenblumen. Ja. Ist der Kohlrabi, die Kinder essen dann nicht viel Kohlrabi.
Die herrliche Zeit, die wir im gastlichen Hause Höss verlebten, wird immer mit zu unseren schönsten Urlaubserinnerungen gehören. Im Osten steht unser Morgen. Herzlichen Dank für eure nationalsozialistische Gastfreundschaft. Heil Hitler.
Wow, 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 wow. Gone for a clearly sort of almost a supremely HD, clean, clinical, pristine sort of colour and edge and composition. Even the tracking shots are so sort of, not that you see a wobble, but they're almost so defined and rigid. There's a rigidity to their smoothness that when they land on their subject, the tracking or panning shots or dollying shots, they land solidly and symmetrically. And the shots are so hyper colour, super coloured, you know, hyper real, if you like. And there's a meticulousness to his hair and their uniforms and the interiors, and so the lines are sharp, and so everything is in crystalline kind of focus, which just gives you more of a sort of, I don't know, it's a sort of, there's an obscenity to how clean this can all be and how clinical the process must have been in Auschwitz, and the inference of what's happening behind that grey wall. And the soundtrack is just nudging you and dragging you towards, imagining the horror of what's going on there. And then you have the chap who's obviously popping, or the guard that was popping some kind of dust, ashes, debris from the showers or from the furnaces. What does that mean? The connection then between the beauty of the flowers and what's gone into, if you like, fertilizing those flowers becomes deeply horrific. And it shows you how you really, this clearly is going to be a film about how you don't show the horror to show the horror. You don't need to see the horror to feel the horror. And you can even feel that anything that's beautiful, and in a sense, it's the very nature of a beautiful flower is to sort of distract us from the horrors of the world, is only there because of the horror that's happening alongside it. Right down to the guest book with someone who's described or written about having had a lovely holiday there. To be able to go there and to be able to be utterly unmoved by what's happening literally 6 yards away at the end of the garden fence. The reason I think The Zone of Interest as a title becomes interesting in the current climate is I think that this is a really important film to throw a spotlight over anti-Semitism and the consequences of the Holocaust and Auschwitz and the concentration camps as depicted. But metaphorically, I think one could begin to relate this to Gaza, a zone of interest, a zone of control. Many people, some would argue, living in Israel, not everyone, and it's really important to say that, not everyone, far from it, but unfortunately some of the most vocal in this current conflict who can sit, I'm thinking of the settlers who are pushing Palestinians out of the West Bank, who are illegally occupying increasing swathes of Palestinian soil, that, you know, that ability to not be thinking about what's happening to these families who have far less than you and are essentially in an apartheid and controlled within a land by a fence and a wall and a gate and have no control over their destiny. This could, and this is where I think I've often said there are great parallels to be had. There are great shared experiences between Israel and Jewish people and Gaza, Palestinians and Arabic people, Muslim people. There are huge parallels and huge similarities in their life experience and cultural experience, which could, in a weird way, by finding the shared experience, as depicted in this film, and seeing how this film could relate to Gaza, that could be where some kind of healing or peace process could be found. So I think this film could be really important. Yes, obviously this is parked within and coming from the Jewish experience in World War II, but the way in which it's positioning the horror feels quite sort of relevant to what we're seeing in the news right now. What do you think?